If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
If you have the same vision as International Horse College, which is to have a world where people safely appreciate, respect and enjoy their horses, and the horses appreciate, respect and enjoy their people, then have a look at their website, internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Now today we've got Larry Cutler on again. Larry's been on before. He's 594 and I think the title there was Australian Stock Horse Society National Judging Assessor. So he's come along, he's got a wealth of information. He's not just been a competitor. He's not just bred horses, but, judge and then assessing judge. So how are you today, Larry?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Glenys. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, thanks, Larry. Thanks for coming on. Now, you're going to talk about the 10 points of a top-class horse, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that even if you've got, I know you love your stock horses and love them as working horses, but I think these points would apply to any breed of horses. Would you agree with me on that? A top-class horse is a top-class horse.
Absolutely. Yeah, There's no doubt about that. I think if you get all the fundamentals correct, then it doesn't matter whether you're a show jumper or looking to breed race horses or polo cross or camp drafting or anything you want to do. If you get the basics right, the horses are as good as the riders that sit on them then.
Perfect. All right, so the first point we're going to talk about is temperament. Do you want to tell us about the temperament of the horse that you're looking for? Now, remember too that this top-class horse that we're looking for, you tell me, Larry, we're looking for an athlete, for one that can go out and do the work that you want.
Yep, correct.
Yep.
So temperament, I feel, is very important for any horse, as we said earlier, regardless of what you want to do with them. As a breaker and trainer, I know the horses that came in, there were some horses that came in and everything you wanted to do with them, it was going to be a fight. They just didn't want to relax. They didn't want to work with you. They just wanted to make everything a fight. And then when you get a horse that comes along that's just got a willing temperament that just wants to work with you, they are so much easier to deal with and to teach, and they take everything on board that you teach them. And really, once you've had a few of those, you don't want to go back to the ones that just want to fight you all the time.
Sure. No, I can completely understand that. So we've got the temperament right. There was something that you did say, that you liked a calm, intelligent horse, not to be confused with a quiet, dumb horse. Just tell us a little bit about how we can recognise the horse as calm and intelligent and not a quiet, dumb horse.
I think you can handle horses and ride horses that are nice and quiet. They're not out to buck everyone off and do silly things. But I have ridden some horses that were very, very quiet, but they would walk into a fence. They would stumble over things because they weren't concentrating on what they were doing. And I sort of call them quiet, dumb horses. And they can be as dangerous as a horse that's real silly. So. Yep. I think a calm, sensible, intelligent horse is the horse we're all looking for.
Okay.
And by that I mean a horse that sort of they're alert, but they're not looking to be naughty or misbehave.
Yep. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is type and conformation, which may vary a bit according to the breed. But can you give us a good description of what you're looking for in a top class horse?
Yeah, well, I always look for a horse that's short-coupled and stands over a lot of ground. And for them to be able to do that, they have to have a nice long hip and they have to have a really good slope on their shoulder. Now, horses that don't stand over a lot of ground tend to be straighter in the shoulder and shorter in the hip. And they tend to be rougher horses to ride.
Yes.
Horses that can stand over a lot of ground and still be short coupled on top are horses that are well conformed through the hind quarter and through the front end.
Yeah.
I also like a horse that's just slightly higher in the wither than they are in the rup, so we call that an uphill ride. That's always a really comfortable horse to ride usually, whereas horses that are lower in the wither than they are in the hip, you're sort of riding downhill and they can often hit the ground a bit harder and be a rougher horse to ride in front, that's all. But that's the picture I look for. So when horses walk into a judging ring that I'm judging and by the time they've done one circle, I've worked out whether it's a horse I'd like to ride or not. And they're the sort of things that I'm looking for that makes a horse comfortable to ride and capable of doing the job that I need them to do.
Yep. Now, if we talk about movement, I know that, you've got to look at it from a judge's point of view, but because you've done so much competitive riding anyway, and just riding to get to the level of competitive riding, you've got to be thinking of the movement has got to be comfortable for ride. So as a judge, you're looking for not something that is flashy, but something that's comfortable to ride. Is that right? Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially when a horse walks into a ring, they're at a walk and they're being led on the ground, and I like to see a horse that can really walk. I like them to overstride. I don't want to be hearing the shoes clipping on each other, so they need to be able to overstride but still have enough strength in their gait that they're not overstriding and clipping the heels in front. I think a really good, strong, straight walk and a nice soft canter are two of the most pleasurable things that you can have when you're riding a horse. And as a kid growing up, my grandfather and father always said that, a horse needs to be able to walk really fast and canter really slow. So have that nice soft canter that you can just sit there for hours if you had to, or a horse that when he's walking, he's actually going somewhere. He's not just dawdling.
Now, I know this next one, sometimes a bit hard to describe, the presence. What's one horse? What is it that one horse is going to stand out from a herd or from a ring of horses? What are we looking for there?
Yeah, it is hard to explain, but horses that have got presence are horses that, when you see, sometimes you'll have 20 horses in a class and there'll be one horse in that class that when he walks in, he's just got a little bit of that. You hear other people say it's a look at me attitude. And I think that presence is all about, when I was playing polo cross, you would, every now and then you'd come up against a horse that was just really smart and clever at what they did and just had that bit of confidence in what they do. I think that's got a lot to do with their presence. I think if the horse is confident in whether it's camp drafting, polo cross or in the show ring, a horse that's generally pretty confident is a horse that's got presence. And they walk around as if they own the place. And you can see it a mile away. I was always told if you had to look underneath a stallion to see whether he was a stallion, then he probably wasn't. They need to have that presence about them that when they're around, people look at them and go, wow, that's a really nice horse.
Yeah. And I think, all these points that you're saying, Larry, the 10 points for a top-class horse, I know that when people first start looking at horses, it's just a different colours going to attract them. It might even be 20 bays and browns and chestnuts and one grey horse, and they go, wow, what's that? Or one palomino or one broken coloured horse or one that's a little bit stand out. But as you're going through it, you're saying there's much more. I haven't even got colour on here. You're saying there's all of these other things that a really top-class horse is considered. We've talked about temperament, type, conformation, movement, presence, and I'm going to ask you now about natural ability.
Yeah, well, really good trainers can get horses doing whatever they want them to do. But the difference between teaching a horse that's got natural ability to do it and teaching a horse that's got no natural ability is sometimes twice the work.
Yes.
And you can often end up with a horse that's only half as good in the end anyway. And that natural ability can be, just the ability of a horse playing polocrosse, that horse that can just drop down in the shoulder and sweep around and get you down to pick the ball up and things like that. That's natural. You can teach a horse so much, but you know, you could get 3 horses in a row, teach them exactly the same things, and one will be brilliant, one will be average, and one will be a waste of time. And it's that natural ability. Camp drafting's exactly the same. My old stallion here, you couldn't drive him past a beast. He would just run straight to the shoulder and sit there. And you know, you can train them a little bit to do that, but if it's not naturally there, then they wander off and they got their mind on other things, and that's when you lose control. Natural ability is something horses have either got it or they haven't, and it can be, you know, for show jumping. You know, a horse that's got natural ability to jump, you've only got to watch 10 or a dozen horses show jump, and you see the ones that love doing what they're doing and can really jump, and others that are there because the rider wants them to be there, not because the horses are being there.
Yeah. Tell us about heart. You know, if we talk about a horse's heart, are we talking about the size of their heart or a little bit different, a little bit more?
Yeah, I suppose when I say a horse has to have a big heart, I'm talking about a horse that when we're competing or even if I'm working, it's the horse that when you're buggered is going to give you that little bit more. And no different, like I played a lot of sport and, you know, if you've got to draw the last little bit of effort you can, they're the ones that you want on your side. And horses are no different. It's the ability of that horse to give you everything they've got to compete in whatever you're going to compete in. And some horses just won't give you that. They always want to keep plenty in reserve, and often you're only getting maybe 60%, 70% of what that horse's capability is. But when you do get around to riding a horse that'll give you everything, it's a great feeling to sit on a horse that you know is going to give you everything.
And you know, that's sort of jumping around a little bit. We've gone from the heart, but the head, you know, heart and the head. Is it that the broader the forehead, the more brains they have? Is that the theory? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, well, I've heard that lots, and I've been told that from the time I was a little bloke that, the broader the forehead, the more brains is in there. I think in physical reasons for that, the fact that the eyes are set broader gives them more vision, more peripheral vision. So when a horse can see a lot going on around them, they don't tend to panic as much. If you get those narrow-headed horses, they've got their eyes sort of set closer together and they can't often see as much or as broad a vision as what that broad forehead gives the horses.
Yep.
So I've always, I mean, initially I just got told as a kid, no, the broader the forehead and filled in above the eyes, you'll have a horse with brains and it's quiet. But when you talk to the vets about the reason for that, they'll tell you that it's all about a horse having their eyes set wider apart, and because of that, they've got more peripheral vision. So that tends to make a horse quieter and calmer because they've got better vision.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about the eyes. I love big eyes. You tell me, what do you think about the size of the eyes? What are big eyes? What are little eyes? What are we looking for within the eyes?
Yeah, I think when you approach a horse for the first time, I think I like a horse to be looking at me, and those big eyes, you know, they're seeing everything. And you can see before you can put a hand on a horse whether they've got a kind eye or whether they've got that little piggy sort of eye about them. You know, a lot of people say that the horse's head's only there to hang the bridle on, and that's probably right to a certain extent. But I think I like a horse with a nice big kind eye, and if you get that and you handle them quietly, they're the horses that I think are a great start for anyone. I found those little piggy-eyed horses, and again, those narrow-headed horses tended to have smaller, piggier eyes as well. And they were horses that, I just walked straight past if I was looking to buy a horse.
You know, you talked about the physical reason for the broad forehead. Is there a physical reason for the bigger eye rather than the little eye?
Well, look, I don't really know. I guess I'm not a vet. I just I look at horses and I find those, and you'll see it in all breeds. It's not just one breed that can do it. I've seen, like my grandfather had big harness horses, and the Clydesdales had the broad foreheads and big eyes, and there was also Clydesdales I've seen with narrow heads and smaller eyes. So they're in all breeds, but and the same in our stock horses and thoroughbreds and quarter horses and Arabs. Like every breed's got horses that have got the broad foreheads and the big eyes, and they've all got the narrow heads and the little eyes. So it's just something that I look for, and I've always found those big eyes on a nice broad forehead horse is a really good sign that they're going to be a pretty sensible horse usually.
Yeah. What about the legs, Larry? What should we look for in the legs? The sizes of the legs, the proportions of the legs.
Yeah, I because I've generally worked with working horses and sporting horses, a short cannon bone was always important, and I don't like horses that are offset in the knees at all, because they're the horses that really struggle when you put a lot of pressure on them.
Yep.
And in the hocks department, I've seen a lot of horses break down in the last few years through the hocks, when I've particularly horses that are being trained like cutting and working horses, where they're getting broken in at 20 months and 2-year-old, and they're expected to be doing a lot of haunch turns, and the angles they get those hocks on and screwing around in often deep sand is really hard on those hocks on young horses.
Yeah.
And our performance horses are the same as the thoroughbred industry. For some reason, we want to get them so good, so young, and there's money there for those 2- and 3-year-old futurities, and we put a lot of pressure on those young horses to get them up, and a lot of them, unfortunately, do end up getting injured through the hocks and the knees, and that's just through concussion at young ages while their legs are still developing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The last question I've got, because we haven't covered it yet, is to do with angles. Are there any particular angles that we should be looking for? Probably more so to do with the hoof. What should we be looking for there?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at a horse, the angles of a horse are really important. So the angle of the shoulder is usually exactly the same as the angle of the pastern.
Yep.
And then the angle of your pastern should again be the same angle that your hoof hits the ground. So if all those angles align, then there's no problem at all. You should have a nice, soft and easy ride. So the straighter your shoulder, then all of a sudden you've got straight pasterns, and then you have a lot more upright hooves, which again causes concussion. When they hit the ground, you've got a lot less give through those joints, and that's where horses often break down. And the same through the hocks in the hindquarters. If they're too straight down through the hocks, and you will then have straighter pasterns. And again, when those horses have to, sit down in their hindquarter to turn or to stop, they really, really put a lot of jarring through those joints, and that's when you can have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
I've always shot my own horses up until a few years ago, and there was lots of arguments about black hooves and white hooves, and white hooves are softer and all the rest of it, and I would tend to agree with that. There's always exceptions to the rule, but I know in the summertime, unshod horses, when you bring them in, it's a damn lot harder to try cut black hooves back and trim them up than it is white ones. So, and I found if a horse was going to throw a shoe, it was often on that white hoof rather than the black hooves.
Yes.
But
Yep.
that just comes from sort of what I've had to do myself.
I had a horse when I was young, and it was a stock horse actually, and it had 4 white feet. And every time my grandfather saw it, he'd say to me, "No white feet by a horse. 1 white foot. Try them. Yep. 2 white feet look well about them, or 3 white feet look well about them, and 4 white feet go well without them."
That's the way.
Yep. I think you and my grandfather must have been talking. I bet the horse always had problems with shoes anyway. Always was throwing shoes and had a bit of a problem there. Okay.
Well, I think a lot of people aren't aware that the white colour, so white colours is actually a pigment problem.
Yep.
So, and yet all the people I hear today talking about bling, I mean, bling is about the worst thing you can be trying to get more and more bling on there is actually breeding more and more problems in your horses.
Yep.
Anyway.
All right. Look, I think you've absolutely covered it. You talk about a top-class horse, and as I said before, when you first start looking at horses, you don't really know what you're looking for, and you're looking for a horse that stands out, whether it's got the presence or it's just a different colour to all the others. That's the one that you're looking for at first. But what you've done here is said, well, look, the horse could just be a plain standard bay with nothing else, but this is the type of horse I'm looking for. And I think a good horse person is going to look for exactly the same 10 points that you've just pointed out, Larry. I think, a good horse is a good horse and doesn't regardless of colour.
Yeah, well, I've had plenty of people tell me you never ride a good horse that's a bad colour. So if you get a good horse, you've got a good horse. It doesn't matter what colour they are.
Exactly. Larry, great talking to you again. The information you shared here, I think it's really good for people who are looking at horses and just aren't quite sure what they're looking at. They've at least got some points now to go about and start, go out to a show or a competition and start being a judge themselves and get a little bit involved in just judging from the sidelines to develop their eye, to look at why that judge is picking that, and they can look at these 10 points of a top-class horse and realise probably if they look on these 10 points why the judge has picked out that particular horse as the winner.
Yeah, I think it's one thing I say when I'm teaching judging is you need to have a picture in your head of what your perfect animal looks like.
Yep.
You can look at thousands and thousands of photographs. You pick up a copy of Horse Deals magazines and there's thousands of photos in there, and you'll flick through that and then all of a sudden one will take your eye, and the one that takes your eye, have a look at it and see why it takes your eye. And it's probably the horse that's ticking all the boxes of what we've just talked about. And it just takes years of experience to be able to look at a horse and go, yep, that one's what I'm after, or that one's stepping short, or that one's got something a little bit wrong with it.
Yep.
And when you find the problem, then you go back and find the reason for the problem.
Yes.
So if a horse is stepping short, it'll be because there's something wrong conformationally further up in the leg, or whatever. So
keeps teaching it to look at the horses. Yeah. Larry,
absolutely.
Thank you, and love to have you back again. I think the points that you've brought up, if anyone hasn't listened to the first chat that Larry did, go back to 594, and we sort of had a good overview. But Larry talks about his beginning and how he got into competing and judging and being a judge assessor. So we look forward to catching up with you again, Larry. But if people would like to talk to you, about stock horses, about looking at horses, anything else, is your website the best, Caraba Park, or should they have a phone number? All those details will be on Horse Chats anyway, but would you like to give out a phone number while you're there? Yeah.
More than welcome to talk to anyone. It's 0448 194 599.
Yep, perfect.
And there's a Caraba Park and Bo Polo Facebook sites as well that keep people up to date pretty much on what's going on with the horses and what we're doing.
No worries at all. All right, Larry, it's great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll catch up with you sometime soon.
My pleasure, and have a Merry Christmas.
If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.